Thank you again for taking time out of your morning to speak with me. I'm very excited to discuss, well, your career in general, but also this new album you have coming out, The Singularity. Um, I guess the first place to start is kind of at the start. Like where did the idea for this concept that is the singularity come from? Like I know there's a lot of moving parts to it.
There are a lot of moving parts, and in many ways, it represents the totality of my musical life. But I think the best way to sort of encapsulate it is to talk about there's a track on there called Escape from the Machines. It's an instrumental, it features Slash and Joe Satriani, which itself is a dream pairing for me, hearing those two guys play together. I wrote that song when I was 15. I was in high school. I wrote exactly the song that you are hearing. And I recorded it with a friend of mine who is actually now a Grammy winning producer in Los Angeles named Malay. But back then it was just Ryan and Bear, and we were sitting in his bedroom. He was a guitar player. I had sequenced out some tracks on my Yamaha PSR 510. I brought over my Tascam 4-track cassette recorder. And when you listen to Escape from the Machines today, the first 15 seconds are from that cassette tape. That's my demo. And then as the groove starts picking up, you hear Malay kicking into this riff on the guitar. Well, suddenly there's this louder drum fill. That's Gene Hoglan, recorded a couple of years ago. And then Slash picks up the riff, and then Joe Satriani takes over the solo in the middle. Um, but I mean, that's it right there, right? I've been working on this song 30 years. And I would re-record it every couple of years. And while I was doing all that, my scoring career took off. That really was my focus. I loved film scores and video game scores and TV scores, and I planted a flag in that genre for a long time. And in many ways, the singularity is allowing me to come full circle and go back to that other genre that I was playing with, hard rock and metal, and then approach it now with the 30 years of experience in cinematic music to see what happened.
Well, and I along the 30 years of your career, you've picked up like a lot of collaborators. I mean, like there are some folks who pop up on this album with whom you've worked, notably Serj Tankanian from System of a Down. I think everybody remembers that amazing cover of Godzilla.
Yeah.
You've got Brendon Small on this album. And also just like I feel like that's been sort of a hallmark of your career, not just working with folks like Sinead O'Connor for the Outlander theme at one point, but also like you've helped a lot of other composers come up along the way, many of whom I've gotten to speak with and speak very highly of you.
Oh,
So,
great.
uh, does it does like getting to collaborate with all of these people, like getting to bring in new people, make this like a really exciting project
It,
even
it
without it taking 30 years.
I mean, it does, but you've also hit upon, I think, a core aspect of music that I love. I love collaborating. I mean, when I say I wrote Escape from the Machines in high school, I didn't record it entirely on my own. I worked with another musician, my friend Malay. That was actually the first time I recorded another musician on a piece of music that I wrote. That's where it all began. And you literally hear that recording on my record today that comes out Friday. Um, but it set in motion this chain of events where I loved writing music and getting it as far as I could get it. I can't make it any better. But then I bring in other people and they make it better. They make it better through performances, through improvisation. I start sharing my ideas with people. What do you think? I think that's in many ways why I gravitated toward film. Because in fact, it's that collaboration with filmmakers that makes the music better. And I started surrounding myself with people that were really good at what they do. And that just kept going. I moved to Los Angeles and met all of the members of my favorite 80s band, Oingo Boingo. And they're on this record, but they were also playing on my scores. Steve Bartek on guitar, John Avila on bass. I have Warren Fitzgerald and interacted with everybody in Boingo at some point or another. But that was like kind of got me thinking, like, who else maybe who isn't in like film particular, or even doesn't even play an instrument that you would think of for a film score, who else might want to collaborate? And I met Scott Ian and brought him onto Battlestar Galactica, and I'd already met Brendon Small and brought him onto some indie features that I was doing, and those collaborations started going two ways. You know, Brendon then asked me to orchestrate and conduct the orchestral parts for the Doomstar Requiem for Metalocalypse, which was itself a dream come true. Um, but yeah, you can kind of see. So what finally happened, right? I did Godzilla in 2019. And when I got hired on Godzilla in 2019, I was literally on the phone with my friend Mike Doherty, who was directing that film. He said, "Would you score this movie?" I was silent for about 5 seconds. And I was like, "Sure." In that 5 seconds, the first thing I thought was, I have to cover Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla. And I didn't say, I was like, do I say it? Do I say it? No, I don't want to sound over eager. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I'll score the movie. Yes. And I kept my ambitions secret. So I worked on the film. It was a very difficult experience because they kept changing the cuts because the effects were changing, and I was writing every cue myself and keeping up with the cuts, and just, I was sweating bullets, man, getting that score done. Really proud of it. Had a great experience. But on the last day of presenting cues, I presented them the rewrites of the finale, the big emotional scene, and a few other moments. And then everyone starts to get up from and leave. We were in the screening room at Legendary Pictures, and I go, "Oh, actually, guys, wait. There's one other thing I want to play you. I have an idea for the end credits. I don't know. What do you think?" And I sat down, and I sat them back down, and I hit spacebar, and the playhead starts moving on the Pro Tools rig. You can see it, and you can see that the audio is about to start playing in about 5 seconds. And Mike Doherty, the director, turns over to me and he whispers quietly, "Blue Oyster Cult?" And then it starts. And I had already called in Serj Tankanian to sing the demo. I had called in Brendon Small to play guitars on the demo. So effectively, I had what you hear in the final product. I had that as the demo. And I just played it for him. And needless to say, it went over really well. But you can see what I'm getting at, right? That like even doing a big blockbuster Hollywood movie, literally the first thing I thought was, how can I incorporate my love of hard rock and metal into this? You know? And then 2 days after the movie opened, I get a phone call. My assistant says, "You have Buck Dharma on the line?" And I go, "Marissa, stop messing with me." And she goes, "No, it's him. It's Buck Dharma is calling you. The guy who wrote Don't Fear the Reaper is calling me." And part of me is like, is he mad? does he hate what I did to Godzilla? No, he loved it. Obviously, he's on my record. I mean, we became quite close. But that's just been my philosophy, my kind of my life philosophy, and it's just kind of expanded over the years. And I enjoy working with people, and I think people enjoy working with me because they keep coming back, man.
I mean, like, on the Singularity, you've got like such a diverse array of people, and like the first single features Rufus Wainwright, who uh, I should have guessed that he would have been perfect to sing a hard rock song, but he's never done one before. So
Ever. He was very brave, putting himself in that scenario and trusting in not only himself but in me as an arranger and producer and songwriter and the material. I mean, he heard the demo of that song, and that is, if you take away Gene Hoglan doing blast beats and the double kicks, and you take away the guitars, I think we're in D flat. It's just a beautiful melody. It's just a beautiful melody that Rufus knows how to sing. So yes, that one, I think he's a genius, and in many ways one of the best voices of his generation. But I wouldn't have guessed he would do a metal song.
and I mean, you've also got MegaRan, which I like that was like that was literally the name that when I was like looking, I've got the advance up on my screen right now, and I was like going through and seeing all of the guests on it, and I was like, wait, what? But like in a very delighted way,
Yeah.
like because that was it's a lot of hard rock folks and stuff like that, but like that just how did you come to meet him and work with him?
I
Because
mean,
I mean, like obviously
MegaRan,
talented.
yeah. I mean, he first of all, have you heard his track? What do you think of it?
Oh yeah, I think it's like it's probably one of my favorites on the album, actually.
Dude, I love hearing that, and you're not the only person who says that. That comes up a lot. There's something about First Day Out, the track with MegaRan, that is really cool, but also lyrically, what he wrote is so universal. It is very inviting. It's very emotional. MegaRan is a nerdcore rapper
Oh, yeah.
who raps about video games and pop culture and wrestling. He and I met. I did my first video game score for a game called Dark Void for Capcom in 2009, I think. So at Comic-Con that year, I was down on the floor at the Capcom booth, and MegaRan was there. He had just released a record of hip hop songs based on the music of a newly released Capcom Mega Man game, a retro style game. So they were going to do an interview with each of us, you know, for their webcast or whatever. They ran out of time. They ran late. And it was divine intervention that they ran late because they said, well, you guys are both music guys. Can we just interview you together? We'd have no, I mean, I didn't work on the Mega Man thing and he didn't work on Dark Void, but we go, sure. We just hit it off, man. I mean, if you know MegaRan, you know, Raheem is just the sweetest guy ever. So positive, so filled with energy. And we just became friends immediately and kept up over the years. He did some remixes of some other Dark Void stuff for me, and I did some strings on some tracks for him. But he was always at the top of my list when I started thinking about artists to reach out to on a solo record. So that song, you know, was a bit more of a stretch, and I had him send me a bunch of his favorite hip hop beats. And I've grown up listening to hip hop. I mean, and rap. I loved Public Enemy when I was a kid. Public Enemy was so cool. But I can't say I'm like immersed in rap music. So I was like, give me some beats, and I was like, I want to know what tempos, you know, you feel good at. And then I was like, how can I turn this into a metal track? And I have Gene Hoglan, and I've got amazing guitarists. My guitarist Omer Bensvi, who's one of my composers too. They lock in so precisely. So I thought, what if I just take some of these really fast syncopated rhythms that you hear in cut up hip hop samples and I throw them on the double kick? You know, Gene can do it. And that was sort of the beginning of that. And then to make it even weirder, right, I throw Kim Thale from Soundgarden on there. That's Kim doing the solo. And during the choruses, which open up with these big, lush orchestral chords, you hear that, man, you hear Black Hole Sun. I don't know how else to say it, man. It's that acoustic tone with that little tremolo and those the voicings that only Kim thinks of. And there's that big orchestral presence. It's in the style of John Williams. Like, you would think I'm talking about the entire record. I'm talking about one song, man. Like, it's crazy. But that was the philosophy of it. Who do I know? Who's fun to work with? Who will bring something unique to this? And First Day Out with MegaRan is definitely one of the most interesting and unique tracks on the Singularity.
So, like, this is you kind of creating your own universe. Like, I mean, over the years, you've gotten to play like in all of the, you've gotten to play in the MCU, you've gotten to play with Godzilla, Lord of the Rings, Terminator, Battlestar Galactica, Outlander, Happy Death Day. Like, I could
Yeah.
go on and on. I mean, you know what you've done.
Yeah. Don't
Uh,
forget He-Man. I got to play with the
and
He-Man toys.
He-Man. So, like, you've
That's
gotten to
ridiculous.
like play in all of these universes. Like, how do you then get to create your own?
I think that's a great question. I felt compelled to create my own. To be honest with you, I have focused so solely on my scoring career for about a 20-year stretch. I told you I was writing some of these songs when I was 15. That desire was always there, but it wasn't always pursued. And it was in 2019 that I started working on the Singularity. I've been actively working on this record for 5 years, almost to the day, actually. And I think it was because I have done so much work in all those other IPs, genres, mediums. I was realizing in 2019 that something was amiss, man. Something was missing. Something wasn't working. I was not any happier or more satisfied than I was when I was 18 and first moved to LA and wanted to make it. And so I just looked in the mirror and I thought, what is it? I had 4 movies out at the same time. I was already starting God of War Ragnarok, coming out of God of War. So, and I had Outlander and Walking Dead was going, Agents of Shield was going. So in three mediums, I was very objectively successful, but I was like something was missing, and I realized I needed to make my own project. It really hit me when I was, I told you about recording Godzilla, right? The
Mm.
song, Blue Oyster Cult song. After I did that demo and Legendary and Mike approved it, we went to Capitol Records and recorded it. So I got Dethklok plus Serj Tankanian. It was Brendon Small, Brian Beller, Gene Hoglan, Serj Tankanian, and me in Capital B for a day. It was the best day of my life to that point. And I was so happy recording some of my favorite music. I got in the car and I was just on cloud nine. And there's a lot of traffic in LA, so I'm going really slow to get back to the west side where I live. By the time I got home, I realized I was getting sadder and sadder. And by the time I got home, I parked the car and I was kind of miserable. And I stopped and I go, why? What is it? And then I realized I did this thought experiment. I thought I got to record one of my favorite rock songs with all my favorite musicians, but it took me 20 years. I've been in the business 20 years before an opportunity like Godzilla King of the Monsters came up. Is it going to be another 20 years before I get to work with Dethklok and Serj Tankanian again? And then it hit me. It was like a bolt of lightning. What if I just wrote another song and asked them to do it? But not for a movie, just for me. And that was the beginning of the Singularity.
That is so, so wonderful. Well, Bear, I believe that is unfortunately our time, but I want to thank you so much for taking your morning to speak with me about this. I'm very excited for everyone else to get to hear this album more
I
than just
appreciate
the
it.
singles. I think folks are going to probably be blown away. Um, is there anything else you have upcoming that you'd like to share before
Well,
we
I
part
mean,
ways?
there's a lot of fun stuff cooking. There's some fun announcements coming up. I am in the finishing stages of Lord of the Rings season 2, which I think people are going to really dig. I'm very excited. And yeah, just keep up with me on socials. I'm in all the usual places. And I wanted to ask you, Nick, if there's any other track that stood out. You mentioned the MegaRan track. I mean, I'm just curious as someone who just listened, what anything else jump out at you?
Like I think, like I mentioned, like really, like that first single with Rufus Wainwright, like that was so unexpected that that was what made me want to reach out and talk to you about this album, is just because it's such a left of center collaboration with everyone involved, and it turned out just so beautifully and wonderfully that I was just like, well, yeah, now I gotta hear the rest of this.
Cool, man. Awesome.
But yeah, thank you again so much, Bear. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye bye.
Bye.